This is our end goal. This guy right here. Birdhouse there on either end. Okay, these holes might be a touch big on this one. I don't know. Not a bird aficionado. That's what we're looking for. Has a nice yard down at the bottom, a baseboard that everything is built upon. It's got fake windows, little doorway. To begin this project, we have to cut out all the pieces for the ground floor. As you can see, we have two different areas for the birds to live in. We'll have a bird hole, you know, an entryway here, an entryway here. Once the top floor's on and the roof's on, they'll be separated. There'll be no way to get from this area to this area. The way we start this, we start with our gable ends, okay? Two of them. You want to make sure these things are evenly cut. They match up nice and neat. It's going to look something like this. I have them marked because they're perfect this way. Everything lines up really nice. There's actually, you have to build the center wall as well, and it fits right in there as well, and it is perfect up here. And we'll go over this, why I cut this off and where you cut that off in a little bit. To cut the gable ends, you take a piece of 9-inch wide plywood, run it about 24 inches long, okay? You can mark it out as I have done here. You don't have to, but you can. You can see this is a 35-degree angle. This is a 35-degree angle, which makes this one 145, which you can't get on your chop saw, but you can get a 35. 9 inches wide, 7.5 inches to the peak. There's reasons for all these dimensions. The dimensions of this floor determine the dimensions of your upper floor. If this is smaller, your upper floor won't be able to, it'll be too small for a birdhouse. You set this against your backstop on your chop saw, and you cut this piece out, and you cut 3 of them, okay? To make the gable ends, you start with a piece of 9-inch wide stock. This could be plywood, it could be solid wood. Knotty pine works pretty well. Plywood would be fine. And what I do is I simply make a single mark, and we want to go 7.5 inches to the peak. So I measure out 7.5 inches, and I make a mark near the center. Then I measure exactly 4.5 inches from the edge, and I make a mark, a single point. Then on your chop saw, you set your blade to 35 degrees. Set your stock against the backstop. Bring it right up to that single point you have marked, and make your cut. Adjust your chop saw the opposite direction. Go right out to 35 degrees. Set your stock right back up where it was, and make a cut the opposite direction. And there's your gable end. At this point, you're going to want to draw a line straight down the dead center of the board. You don't have to draw it all the way to the bottom, although you could. And then you're going to, at that point, you're going to bore the hole for the bird to access. Once you have your 3 gable ends cut out, and remember this one, we haven't cut this one off yet, so this one you can make it a little taller. It can go all the way to the peak, that's fine. So there'd be 3 that look exactly like this. And once you have those 3, remember, 7.5 inches tall to the peak, right? 7.5, 9 inches wide, okay? So, and because they're 9 inches wide, 7.5 to the peak, that determines this length here. And I will tell you, this length is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 3/8. This distance from here to here is 4 3/8 inch, okay? Now, why is that important? Because when you go to cut the front and the back, you want these to be cut 4 3 lengths to the long point, okay? To this point here to there, roughly 4 3/8. I would cut it a little long on the to start with. Cut 2 of them. What's the length on these? The length should be a minimum of 14.5. There's a reason for that. The length of this board will determine how large each of these cavities is. The cavities should be a minimum of 6 inches on each side. That's why the 14.5. This is 6 and about a quarter. So we're at about 6 1/4 this way. We're 9 this way, so the bird's going to have plenty of room to live. The plywood I'm going to use for the front and the back is going to be 1/2 inch, okay? 1/2 inch material. You can use whatever you want. Use 3/4 if you want. It doesn't matter. Now, this is the front wall. The front wall needs to marry perfectly with these, okay? That's why I say when you cut these, cut them a little long and then move your fence in on your table saw as you're shaving off this 35-degree angle off this edge. You're going to take a little more off and a little more off until you get it absolutely perfect, okay? You want this because then when we set our roof on here, where our roof is going to look something like this, when you set your roof on, it'll glue down over this surface, and this surface. And you put a little glue here and it just glues, it just gets your roof to sit really tight. The rear wall, it's totally different. This, well, it's different. It's not that it's different. The rear wall is a little shorter because this rear wall is a sliding panel. I don't know if, maybe I didn't show you that. Let me show you that right now. If you look at this on the back side of this unit, these 2 screws, I pull those out. This whole wall just slides out and we can access the 2 chambers inside here to clean them out, which should happen probably once a year. And then this panel up here, 2 screws there, this thing lifts off, okay? So you can access it from the back. The front, those panels don't come off. All right, so back to this guy. So we're going to cut these roughly 4 3/8 inches to the long point this way, and at least 14.5. I think I went, let me see what I went on this one. Yeah, I went 14.5. So I went exactly 14.5 on this, okay? That should be the minimum. The base. Now the base is a piece of plywood that's been trimmed out. Been rimmed with, and that's just to, again, cover the end grain, okay? Keep in mind all this is going to be painted and it's all going to be sealed. I'll go over the sealer later. You'll have a good idea of what I use, and I've had good luck with the sealer that I use, okay? The birdhouse is going to sit on top of here, and if you'll notice I have it penciled off. I don't know if you can see that, but I have a pencil line drawn. That is the actual where the birdhouse is going to go. So there's going to be, it's going to cantilever out from the base of the birdhouse, just about 1 inch all the way around. And the reason I draw that line is because you paint the base before you put the birdhouse on. It makes it a lot easier. You'll notice that this is a lot wider than this one. Remember, we have a removable panel at the back of the birdhouse that's going to slide. Again, all this you're going to see as this project comes together. So the center divider is merely one of the gable ends that's been cut off. Make it 5 1/4 inches tall. These are all square cuts. There's no bevel this going this way. You do have the 35-degree angle over here, and it should marry up real cleanly with the other 2 so that these are all even. 5 1/4 inches to the top, 5 1/4 inches here to here. Okay, once you get all these pieces cut, the next thing you're going to want to do is take your gable ends, put a bore in. The bore should be 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches, somewhere in that size range, depending on the size of the bird. But we're not going to get a big bird inside here, so. And you're going to want to trim. Let me show you on this one. You're going to want to trim the hole. Well, you don't have to. This is something I do. With a beauty ring. This is just a piece of wood. To make the beauty ring, I simply use 2 hole saws. One right inside the other. And then you run it through a table saw to about 1/8 inch thick. The rings will fall out. And you can attach them using glue. And they come out looking like that. When you're at this point, you've got all this done. The next thing you want to do is cut some stock. You could use clear pine, you could use fir. Poplar would probably be the best. It's roughly 1/4 inch in dimension this way, 1/8 inch thick. And you'll use your sled. You'll cut a bunch of strips of this and you'll use your sled and cut the trim that goes around the windows. See that? See the trim on the windows here? You're going to trim out your windows. So at this point, on your front wall, you're going to want to maybe put a doorway in the center, 2 pieces of trim that go down with something over the top, separates a door area, and then 2 windows evenly spaced. Now keep in mind, you're going to have a trim board on either end. Now I'm using a trim board that's shaped like this. Now this is a difficult cut to get. This is a difficult board to get. It takes 2 table saws really. And you know, you may have to cut 2 separate pieces where you have one piece that goes over this edge and another piece that comes over this edge, and it'd be wider than this. You can see this is 3/4 inch wide going this way, and it's 3/4 inch wide going that way. And what that does, this is designed to cover the end grain of your plywood for protection. Okay, once you have the front panel and the rear panel all cut the proper length and everything, take your front panel, measure dead center, draw a line. This is going to determine where, this is going to determine where your doorway goes. Now I made my doorway roughly 2¼ inches wide. That would be the inside dimension, inside here to here. I trim it to a place where I think it looks fine, you know, to make it look like a doorway. It looks like these 2 doors are, yeah, you know, pretty normal. After you've center marked and maybe marked out where that door goes, you want to mark where the trim boards are going to go. Okay, I don't know if you can see the lines. I penciled off here, and I penciled it off on this end. I don't know if you can see those lines. Okay, so you pencil that off, and now you know roughly how to center each window. Okay, I set the windows 3/4 inches off the bottom, and I think actually I'll just give you the dimensions. I'm at 2½ on this length, and I think I'm a little tall here. I've got 1 3/4. I think I'd cut that down to 1½ because I think that's just a little tall for my liking. You make your own decision. You can determine the detail you're going to have at each corner. I kind of like this look. It's kind of a country look. Now, once I get these cut out, you can glue them on, and then you can come back and paint this frame whatever color you're going to do. And you can see on mine, I painted them dark, and then I painted the body of the wall white, right? So I've got a contrast there that I like. Same with the trim boards. You'll notice that the trim boards out here, I've gone ahead. Now these are not the trim boards that are going to go on here, because you see how it's detailed here and it's detailed here, 2 different details. This goes on I'm just using this as a sample. However, I paint them prior to putting them on. I paint the body white, and then when I come back over, I get a nice clean edge. I don't have to clean up at all with a paintbrush, right? So that's what I do. You can do the same with the trim. You can paint it whatever color you're going with. Remember, these trim boards that are on the ends, they don't go on until after this, after the birdhouse is assembled. And the reason is you're going to shoot brads or nails, or you're going to screw, or you're going to do something to secure this wall. I'll show you. I'm going to tilt that off. You're going to be securing this, right? You're going to be securing this to this. So you're going to be driving like a nail through here, couple, with glue on the backside. And then after that's all set, then you come back with your trim board and you cover up those nails, see? And then the trim board also covers the rough edge, okay? So that's the idea there. Once you get this board trimmed out, your front, just your front board, not your back. Remember, we're not doing the back panel. Once you get your front panel trimmed out, and you're gonna take your gable end, and remember you'll have a bore here, and you'll probably wanna outfit a couple windows here, again, using this to determine how far in, you know, to determine, you're gonna have center line here. You want these things, you don't want to set your window too close to this edge. You want to make sure you're, you know, a little ways away. So that end, that gable end, might look like something like that. Okay, as you can see, I went ahead and painted the body. It's white. It's a blue-gray for the windows. Did the same. I came back, did all the body, the windows. And at this point, I want to treat the door. Now, the door is going to get this product here. It's a Bear product. It's waterproofing stain sealer, and I've got a Bordeaux colored. I'm going to give it a couple different coats. First coat goes on. Now, you'll notice, well, one little kind of fly in the ointment here. And that is that the grain of this plywood is running lengthwise. It's running this way, which, you know, for a door, it should be running the other way. Not the end of the world. Keep in mind, this is a birdhouse. Okay, at this point, I'm going to apply, I don't know if you can see this, but it's a little brass brad. And it just, what'll happen is I set them up as if I am installing a couple of doorknobs. I'm going to apply glue to the joint and then shoot it with a brad nailer. Put a little glue down. I'm going to shoot it with 3/4 inch brad. Okay, I decided to screw this down to the base prior to putting our trim pieces on the corners. At this point, I'm going to pencil. Now this lets me know where the interior, the inside of this birdhouse sits. And since I penciled that off, I know exactly where I want to go. I'm going to clamp this end down. I'm ready to do the other end. I'm going to pull this in. That's perfect. this point I'm ready to apply my trim boards on the sides, and then I can paint those, and we can start working on the roof. Keep in mind, you know, I am using plywood that I have left over in my shop. So this is an old piece of something, you know. I've got a lot of different, I just finished a remodel on a kitchen, so I built kitchen cabinets, so I had a bunch of plywood left over, and this is some other stuff. Anyway, center divider. I have not glued the center divider down. You'll see that I've got these little pieces of board. They're going to get glued down. Now what these do is they will keep moisture from going in, you know, from passing into this here. Remember, back here we have a removable panel. This panel sits here. It's below grade right here, right here. So the roof is going to ride right over the top of this without touching it, and it will slide right out. So this is not secured, so I cannot caulk this outside edge because this panel needs to move. I can caulk this, which I will do later, okay? After these are glued down and painted, I will come back and caulk it with clear caulk so that no moisture gets in. Now, because remember, you got a flat surface here. Rain comes in at an angle, it's going to get on this surface. You don't want it going under here. So this all gets caulked at the bottom edge. Now, I want to talk to you about the corners. I need to trim this corner out, correct? So, I showed you that I had stock. Now this is kind of a defective one. It's got a thin side and a thick side, but cutting this is kind of difficult. It takes 2 passes, well, 3 passes on the table saw, and you have to adjust the fence and the blade. And it just, you know, there's another way to get that, and I'm just going to show you right here. I don't know if you can see that. This is one piece of wood, this is a piece of fir, this is a piece of poplar. I'm just using this so you can see that I glued these 2 pieces together to make this. This is 3/4 inch wide here, and it's actually almost 3/4 inch wide here. I think it is 3/4. I just put a little bead of glue, you know, hooked it, you know, connected it for a few minutes, left it overnight. It's solid enough. When I put this on here, and I fasten this, the glue on this side and this side will hold this thing together. Actually, but when I mention this, see how we have the end grain of the plywood right here? This is like, you gotta cover this, right? So what I'm gonna do to put this board on is I am going to put caulk, clear caulk, right up. Now, and I'm gonna cover that whole thing, and I'm gonna put a little caulk on this side. I'm gonna squeeze this in, and when I squeeze, the caulk is going to come out on this side. I just take and wipe it off with my fingers, same with this side, and now I have a sealed joint right there. So again, I'm trying to just make this birdhouse survive years, you know, a long time, and it should. It's very solid build. So with that said, at this point, you can see this one's coming together, and we're going to move on to the roof. And again, on these things, you should notice I painted them beforehand, and the reason is I get a really clean line right there. I don't have to come back and touch that hardly at all, if any. So anyway, yeah, at this point, we're moving on to the roof. Stick around. The next video will drop probably in a week, and we'll get into the roof. Hope you've enjoyed this.